Welcome to the She EmpowHers Podcast, the very first episode where we will talk with real women about real transformations with the real, the raw, and the rise. I am your host, Kimmah Lewis, and this is our very first episode, but we're going to do things a little bit different today. I am going to hand over the reins to a very good girlfriend of mine, Brooke Bartos. Why? Because I want you to understand how She EmpowHers was born. It was actually born from my story, from my struggles, from my growth, from my glow up, and from my testimony. And the best person to tell that story is someone who knows me intimately. So my very good girlfriend that I met in my marketing career over a decade ago. She is, first of all, she's a mom to an amazing 9-year-old, absolutely gorgeous redhead daughter. She's beautiful. She's a wife. She is a kick-ass marketer, and you can look her up and see all the amazing things that she's done. She's always given back to either the classroom or the community, and she really embodies what She EmpowHers is all about. Women, elevating women, supporting women. And so today we're going to talk about my story, my pivots, my pains, my power, my ups, my downs. She is going to dig deep, hopefully, and it won't be too painful. But I'm super excited about this episode because this is the very first and it kicks it off and it really sets the stage for what you guys can expect in the future. So without further ado, I'm handing it over to you, Brooke Bartos, and don't make it hurt too bad, girl.
Well, thank you, Kimmah, for that very generous introduction.
Of course.
You know, just to expand on that, I have been so fortunate to feel like I have had a front seat in watching your journey and your transformation. And I think for me, it very much felt like a full circle moment when you first approached me and told me a little bit about She EmpowHers, because I've seen so many different phases and so many different journeys that you've been on over the course of the last 10 plus years. And, you know, as we kind of start to think about She EmpowHers and in the purpose and what it means, you know, looking back on all of those journeys, where do you think the origin was, or what was the season of life that really set the stage for She EmpowHers and where we are?
So that is actually a super, super easy question. And I won't go into like my whole spiritual life and my spiritual journey, but I've told you this story before. It was when I had the "your valley is your gift" moment, when I really feel like I had a spiritual moment where God spoke to me and he said, "Your valley is your gift." And the way that I translate that is everything that I have gone through is a gift to someone who has not gone through it yet, because it tells them how to get through it. It shows them what's possible. So many people go through moments or tragedies or traumas, or they have failures. And sometimes those traumas, those tragedies, those failures are so overwhelming, they get stuck in those. And I don't think they always know how to get out of those. I've just been gifted with this spirit of I can get through anything, just resilience. I don't even know where it came from, to be perfectly honest. And so that was really for me the first heartbeat of She EmpowHers before I actually knew She EmpowHers. It was when I had that moment, and I was in the worst moment of my life. Like, I was literally about to be homeless. I was ending an engagement from like a several year, almost 7-year relationship, I think, at that point. And I was finishing school, and I had already gone through so much leading up into that point. But at that moment, I knew that everything was going to be okay. I just knew it in my gut that at some point I was going to get to a moment where I was going to need to tell other women my story and help them transform the way that I transform. And that was really, I would say, the first heartbeat of She EmpowHers. I didn't know it at that point, but that was really the driver of me to push so hard and to get to where I am today.
I want to dig deeper on that because you talk about that relationship, that engagement. And that I had the front row seat.
Yeah, you did.
But it was a relationship, you know, full transparency. It was a relationship that you were in for too long.
Yeah,
it was a relationship that wasn't serving you, but it was a relationship that at the time you felt committed to because of your son.
Yeah. Yeah.
What for you, though, was the catalyst of breaking free from that and taking that next step in the relationship with yourself and serving yourself?
Remember, so even funny enough, like spilling all the tea, even after that moment when I had that big epiphany, I still went back after that. Like, and it happens, right? Like you like, it's over. I'm
Yeah.
done for real
Yeah.
this time. And then you go back and then you're like, I'm done. And then you go back because if you haven't learned what that season came to teach you, you just repeat the lessons over and over again. And I remember that we were in therapy one day and we were trying to work things out again for the umpteenth time. And I remember listening to him say who I needed to be in order for him to be what I needed him to be. And I was just like, this goalpost will always move. I will never be good enough. I will never be who that person wants to be. And I was just like, is that the type of love that I deserve? And I was like, no, I deserve a love that shows up for me, even when I'm still figuring out who I am. And I knew that that wasn't it. And it wasn't even a discredit for him. It's not a knock to him because I think he brought some great things into my life. But I realized he was not the person for me because I wasn't even being the person for me. I was choosing somebody who wasn't even choosing me. And I literally, in the middle of therapy, this was like probably one of my biggest badass moments of my life. In the middle of our therapy session, I grabbed my purse and I said, I'm done. And I walked out and that was it. I cried all the way to the parking lot though. I chose
Yeah.
myself. I chose Kimmah on that day. And that was like probably one of the proudest moments I've ever had is really choosing myself and not even myself just in that moment. I chose the future me in that moment because that opened the door for me to get here.
Yeah. I remember that pivot, but I remember not only how that was reflected in your family relationships, but how that also impacted your career. Because when you say
Mhm.
you chose you, that changed a lot of things. That perspective shift
Mhm.
unlocked some doors.
It
So walk me
did.
through a little bit as you started to think about your career in that way too, and choosing yourself professionally too. I mean, you made some big moves.
I made a lot of big moves and big pivots. And I think I always knew that I was meant for more. Like I always knew like from 9 years old, I was like, listen, I'm going to be an executive. I'm going to wear fancy suits and high heels and be in the boardroom and tell all the men what to do. Don't ask me why. I must have read in a Sweet Valley High book or something. Like why I thought that's what business was. But I remember like in the books that all of the decision makers were always men, even in the books. And I always thought that that was weird. And so like from back then, I've always known what I was capable of. I think I just didn't know how to get there. Like I didn't have resources, didn't have support. I like to joke and say that I'm an orphan, but it's not really a joke, but both of my parents are deceased. So I didn't have the guidance from parents. At that time, my support system didn't reflect where I was trying to get to. So who was there to tell me, hey, this is how you get on that journey? But it was really when I started to discover my own self, like I was like, oh, you can do hard things and you can survive hard things because in that relationship, I was so dependent upon that person, like for everything. And when I ended it, it was like, hey, either you're going to be the boss of your life or you're never going to get there. And that really helped me to start to step into my confidence and make bold moves in my career. Like, I've always kind of like asked, for promotions or asked to be on projects because I just wanted to do more and better. But I think it's different when you ask them and it's different when you start to expect. And I think
Yeah.
I started to move into a place where I'm like, I expected people to say yes. I'm like, because I'm brilliant, damn it. And I'm confident and I know my stuff. And so if you don't say yes, you're crazy. I'm going elsewhere. And I started to transition in my career and I brought that energy with me.
But
Mhm.
on the career line,
Yeah.
as we go a little bit further back, it has a different origin story than what the typical is. And that is that
Mhm.
you never graduated high school.
Boom. Yeah.
And looking back at that as a part of your journey. You were a
Mhm.
girl out of Chicago
Mhm.
who also people would be surprised to know now has a 26-year-old son.
Yeah. Surprise.
Talk about a
Yeah.
lot of early impact on your education, on your
Mm.
career, and on
Mhm.
what other people told you you would be capable of.
Oh my gosh. Let's start with the last one because that one is really like, I love when people tell me what I can't do. I just love it. I
Yeah.
always have. And I'm like, oh, really? That's interesting that you think that I'm not about to just dust you with this. But I mean, when you look at the statistics, if you look at the data, I can't recall it off the top of my head at this moment, but I've looked it up so many times because it was one of those things that drove me. Like, okay, I'm Black, I'm a woman, I grew up in the inner city. I don't have parents. I don't have a support system. I dropped out of high school. I had a baby at 20. No way am I supposed to be in the top 1% of earners in the US. That's not going to happen. And it happened. So, very early on, I had, friends, parents who didn't want them to even be friends with me because I was the bad influence. I was the girl who was going nowhere.
Mhm.
And there were plenty of people who, passed over me for opportunities because of my background. I had one person who said in jest, because maybe they thought it was funny, that a GED was a good enough diploma. And it just used to sit with me and it hurt me so much because I did go and get my GED after I dropped out. I remember to go into Osco and they used to sell the Cliff Notes books. And I went and I saw
Mhm.
a Cliff Notes book and it said Cliff Notes for GEDs or something like that. And I was like, cool. I read the book from cover to cover in a weekend and I went and took the test and I passed it first try. Imagine, I'm this young girl and, I have these big dreams to do these big things, but I didn't have the formal education. I didn't have what it looked like on paper, but I've always had heart. I've always had passion and I've always known that I could do more. And so I just taught myself a lot of the stuff. Like I taught myself how to design. I taught myself how to write. I mean, I was always an avid reader, so writing was always came really natural to me because I just grew up reading books. And so I proved to everyone that was willing to give me an opportunity that I was better than even they thought that I was. And I'm so happy that I don't live in a space where I have to prove anything to anybody anymore because I know that I'm good enough. And that energy of having to constantly prove to someone that I deserve this job, I deserve this opportunity. No, that's not really where you want to be either. Funny story. I remember moving from one job early in my marketing career to another job, like so maybe from a coordinator role, like marketing coordinator role to like a marketing supervisory role. Those things don't even exist anymore, but that's what it was called back in the day, back in the olden days. And so
Back in the fax machine
so
days.
back, well, girl, literally back in the fax machine, PDF where? And so I remember I was negotiating salaries. And I think I was talking to someone and I was just like, I think I want to ask for, I think it was $50,000. Maybe it was 45, $50,000, which was like a lot of money to me back in the day. And they were like, I think you should not ask for more money. I think you should just try to make a lateral move because you don't have a college degree. And I was just like, so I should ask for
Mm.
less? I should not ask for what I feel like I'm worth because I don't look like what I should look like on paper. And I think like even though that person was the first person that actually said it, I think many people felt it over the years. Like, how
Yeah.
dare you ask for more? How dare you want a raise? How dare you want a promotion? How dare you want to run this team? How dare you want to be a manager? Yeah, how freaking dare I? Because I knew
Yeah.
what I was capable of. And sure, there were seasons where I was still learning and I was still getting skills and stuff like that, like especially before I decided to go back to school and get my degree. But I've always been a hard worker. I've always been super, super passionate about what I do and how I show up in work and outside of work. And there are very few people that will outwork me. And that's not because I like to work. It's I like to be good at things. I like to learn. I like to grow and to bloom and be like, oh, I'm different today than I was yesterday. So like I don't know anybody who does that better than I do.
There is a resiliency in that, though, that you don't learn in the classroom.
No. No.
No teacher
No.
is going to stand in a room and teach you that.
Yeah.
And being able to tap into that need, that fire, that want
Yeah.
is how you get to the next level.
Yeah.
We've talked about this and how this is reflected in relationships, in friendships,
Mhm.
in work. Sort of that age-old phrase of you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right?
Yeah.
You can
Totally.
you can put yourself out there. You can try
Mhm.
to help people. You can try
Mhm.
to coach people, but sometimes they don't want it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. And it's so funny because when I was working with a brand agency, I was working with this agency. Shout out to Simply Sweets because the branding for She EmpowHers is fire. But I was working with them and we were talking about messaging for the brands. And our AE was just like, well, what happens to the women who haven't discovered that they want more yet? And I said, well, this isn't for them. And they were like kind of taken back because it's supposed to be for every woman. And it reminded me of this therapy session because shout out to therapy because Lord, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. But I was in this therapy session some years ago when I first moved down to Houston and I was trying to work and process the breakup before I met my husband. And I was talking about like I was really just trying to help this person. And the therapist was like, did he ask for help? And that gutted me because I was just like, no, he didn't. And he's like, so you're mad because he didn't take something he didn't take something that he didn't ask for that you offered? You're offering things that people don't ask for. And I realized that my entire adult relationships, all of them, were based on me leading a horse to water and literally trying to make them drown in it. Like, drink this water. You want this growth. You want this evolution. You want this transformation. You want this power. Because I was like, I was learning it. And the minute I learn it, you know this about me. The minute I learn something, I'm trying to give it away to somebody else. Like, I don't believe that
Yep.
wisdom should be held back. I will never gatekeep. It doesn't matter what it is, mascara, therapy, Spanx, whatever I'm going to share. But I learned is that help should be given when it's asked. I mean, obviously, there's situations where you see somebody in need and you just jump in, but people have to be ready for transformation. And so this is what I was telling the agency is that this is for women who had the ache already. If you don't have the ache for more, I can't make you want more for you. And so I've always wanted more for me. And I think that's where because the ache didn't go away until the more became present, like until I was
Yeah.
living in that more. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
It does. And I
okay.
feel like it fits very well into the genesis of She Empowers. And I think this is,
Mhm.
it's something that I brought up to you when we first talked about this idea that you had,
Mhm.
is how it felt to me like a lot of connecting the dots. Because I
Mhm.
saw you, we talk about the GED,
Mhm.
and I saw you earlier on look for opportunities to mentor or connect with
Mhm.
young women that were high school dropouts and talk
Mhm.
about your
Yep.
journey.
Mhm.
And I've seen you take part in conferences and roundtables and presentations that are focused on young women in marketing or Black
Mhm.
women in business. And you've
Mhm.
always looked for those opportunities to not only as you've built the ladder to climb to, you know, the idea of like pulling the ladder up behind you, it's not that you pull the ladder up behind you, it's that you're building a staircase in place of the
Ooh.
ladder is how that feels.
Mm.
And so I think when you told me about She Empowers and I reflected back on the journey, everything you've been through your career, your relationships, but I think another big one is family and
Mm.
navigating so many pieces of, when you come to work and you have a career, it's not just the person that sits in the desk chair every day, but you bring with you your family, your children, your
Mhm.
relationships to that table. So I do want to go back to the beginning a little bit, and we talked about parents.
Mhm.
and how you didn't have your parents with you.
Mhm.
And this goes back to when you were 20 and the year that your
Mhm.
son was born, and trying to navigate that with something else that was hugely impactful in your life.
Yeah.
And that was the loss of your mom.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about learning how to not only navigate an early stage career as a woman in your early 20s, but
Mm.
doing so
Mhm.
with a new baby and navigating the passing of your mother due to cancer.
Mhm.
What were those first couple of years like trying to figure all of that out? And
A
what's some of the
hot
biggest lessons
ass.
that you think have brought you?
It was a hot ass mess. That's what it was. It was a hot ass mess. Those first couple of years were just like me floundering because there was no North Star. I didn't have a North Star. I didn't have anybody to tell me I didn't even know that I needed a North Star. So I was dealing with being a new parent, learning how to be a parent, grief, and then also being responsible, like a responsible adult. So I got pregnant at 20. I had Dylan at 21, and my mom passed away at 22. So that's the arc that we're talking about right now. Like, do you know any really super responsible 22-year-olds? Like, let's be real. I know a bunch of 22-year-olds, and like every interaction is just like, I'm gonna pray for you. Because what are you thinking? Like, as you alluded to earlier, I have a 26-year-old son and I love him to pieces. But I think, like, I was a parent at your age. And so some of the stuff that he tells me, I'm just like, okay. And so, like, seriously, what's happening
Dylan, we love
here?
you. We love you.
Shout out to my baby. I'm so sorry. I love you, babes. So during that part of my story, it looked messy. You said something about how when you show up to work, you're not just showing up at your desk as that employee, as employee number 762, right? You're showing up as every area of your life. Well, that's how your other areas of your life are too, right? When I was showing up as a mom at 22, I was also showing up as a grieving daughter. I was also showing up as a someone earlier in their career trying to determine how to grow and what my worth was and how to show up in the workforce that, especially back then, did not look like me, right? And so it was a lot of me, like a lot of trial and error, because I'm learning how to budget at that point. I didn't know how to budget. I didn't know or have credit. I was probably in, well, not my first apartment because I moved out pretty. It was my first big girl apartment for sure. Like, that was not a studio or one room situation. And I had another person that I was trying to navigate it with. And the other thing was, because I didn't have the most ideal childhood, I was, very I was a lonely kid. I read a lot to escape and didn't really feel super connected to my mom the way that I wanted to be. So I just knew that I wanted to create something different for my son than that was created for me. And that kind of was the thing that drove everything. Like, you got to figure this career thing out. You got to figure this grief out. And even,
It
with the
became your
grieving
North
part,
Star.
that became my North Star. Yep. Being what I didn't have. And let me tell you how big of a mistake that was. I realized, I'm jumping forward a little bit. So my son has dealt with depression, as you know, and suicidal ideations, which he's given me permission to talk about this publicly. And it was, even though earlier I think I did need something to drive me, what I missed was who my son actually was in that process and what he needed. So there was what I needed and there was what he needed. I created the life that I wanted to have. I created the parent that I wanted to have, but it completely erased who my son was and what he needed. And it wasn't until he started going through his own discovery, his own painful moments, his depression, that I realized that I was the parent I needed and I was not the parent that he needed. And holy, talk about
That's
a gut punch.
powerful.
Yeah, talk about a gut punch. I was like, shit, basically, like
Yeah.
literally. And I remember that moment. I was in my old townhouse and he was actually in the hospital at that point. And I was standing
I
at the
remember that.
bottom of my steps and just tears. And I was just like, I've erased him in creating this life. And I was like, no wonder why he's going through all of this stuff, because I'm not showing up the way that he needed me to. I was showing up the way that I needed for myself. And I was like, I tell every single mom, and when I tell you every single mom, I don't know if I told you this. I'm sure I've told you this story. When they're talking to me, when their kids, especially when their kids start to get into that figuring out who they are stage, I remind them, like, make sure that you are not parenting yourself in this moment. Make sure that whatever, because it's like at that point, it's like your wounds cannot come up in the moment when you're parenting your kids' wounds, because you will end up trying to address a wound that's not there and ignoring the one that is. And so that for me was just, like I said, a gut punch. And that's when I really doubled down on therapy, because I realized, like, I'm really screwing my kid up, because all these wounds that I had from my childhood that I didn't heal and I didn't work through, they have not gone anywhere. They're right here. They're present. And now I'm looking at them in the mirror of my child. I'm looking at them in his life. And I'm like, if you don't heal, you will kill him. And I was like, get it together. And that's when I started taking therapy seriously. So I know I like went forward. So I'll go back to, and we could come back there. But, you know, early in my journey, that did become my North Star. And I'm not a regrets person. I don't really have any regrets. And that's not to say that I didn't make any mistakes, but I feel like if you learn from it, it has value. And I really do try to learn from everything. And so, yes, that became my North Star, my guiding light. Like, you got to figure out how to have a good career so you can make more money, so you can take care of your family. You got to figure out your finances because your son deserves stability. You know, you have to. But the bad part about it was, because I didn't have this parental figure to guide me, that became the guiding voice in my head. And she was not nice. She was not gentle. She did not extend grace. All she did was push. And she helped me get to a certain point. But at some point, homegirl had to go, because I was just like, I will never be enough for this voice inside my head that feels like this parental voice that I felt was helpful for so long, pushing me and helping me figure out the messy middle, right? Because that's what the earlier part of my journey was. After I had Dylan and after my mom passed away and early in my career, it was really like, okay, you got to figure it out. So yeah, early in my journey, that push was powerful, but at some point it became painful, and that had to go. And so, but I knew that voice could not still exist if I wanted to continue to grow to the next level.
That's heavy. It's a lot of weight to carry. And
Yeah.
before I go on, I do want to take a moment to thank you and Dylan for the vulnerability of sharing that piece of the story, because especially things like suicidal ideation and hospitalization is a very difficult topic. And, you know, I do want to call out to any listener, if you do need help, there are resources out there. There are 800 numbers to call. You are not alone. So if that is ever something, please do find a way to reach out to someone.
Thank you for saying that. And I will link that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, we talked about resources.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's alone. How did you find the resources, whether that was organizations, doctors, therapists, even something online? How did you find things that are the right fit, and what advice would you give to somebody that is looking for that to help guide them?
I mean, research, really. Like, there was not a place where there was not anyone who was talking about what I was talking about who could say, when I was going through this, I did that. So that wasn't available. The doctors was literally like, I would go to Psychology Today and search and criteria and neighborhood, and they specialize in this. And then we would both cycle through doctors until we found the right fit. Same thing with medication. Same thing with even my own personal journey, because as I said, when I realized that some of my own things were also hurting my son, I was like, oh, I have to heal. So like the amount of self-help books that I have brought over the years is it's outstanding. I probably have single-handedly kept that industry in business with all of the books that I've brought. But it was like, I would read something, I'd be like, you know, this applies, or no, it doesn't apply. And like, not like this is not about the She EmpowHers platform, but that's really why I wanted to create this platform. Because when you're going through it, do you really want to, when you're like going through something and you need help, do you really want to spend hours, days, weeks, months trying to figure out what to do next? Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. There were so many times when I just wish like, is there like I would actually go on the website for the hospitals that he was at, and I'd be like, is there a group for mothers with teenagers who are going through this thing? Nope. Is there like an online community somewhere? Is there a Facebook group? Girl, I was like desperate. And I mean, luckily it's that resilience again. Like I just don't believe in giving up. Like I don't know. I don't know what it is in me. I'm like that fly in the room that you can never catch. That's just like, would you please just leave so we can have peace? I'm like, I'm just gonna keep going. But it was hard. It was so hard, and it took so long just trying to, and also like I was working at the time. I was still a full-time mom, working full-time, taking care of a son who had some serious challenges, navigating other areas of my life, friendships, families, support systems, finances. And now I have this full-time job of trying to figure out how to get help for me and my son. What? Like, somebody please make this easier for us when we going through it, because I don't have enough hours in a day to do that crap, but it was necessary. But I would just find YouTube videos, or YouTube University really is a thing. There's some amazing resources there, but you have to scroll through them, and you have to, okay, you 10 minutes in and you're like, okay, this ain't it. They got me with the caption, but the content ain't matching,
Yep.
Clickbait. But I eventually found some great resources. There's this one book. I will also link it in a in the show notes. It's The Trauma of the Gifted Child, or the Life of the Gifted Child. And it really talks about how your childhood trauma impacts you in adulthood. And that was such a good book for me when I finally discovered it. And I don't know how I discovered it, to be perfectly honest. Like I literally don't know how I found it, but I started to see, not only like I read it for myself, right? Because that's why I got it. I was like, well, how is my trauma showing up for my kids so I can be a better parent and a better mom? But then it started to help me because, I'm low-key think I'm Dr. Phil. It started to help me to see other people from a different lens also. And not like I was trying to diagnose them, but I would be like reading the book and I would highlight and I'd be like, ooh, that's my sister, because she does this and our mom did that and that's a tie-in. Or, ooh, this is bonus dad, like he does this and his parents did that. And so, it also started to help me to navigate relationships better and give people grace and realize that people aren't doing things to you. They are living their own experiences, walking with their own trauma and navigating their own healing journey. And maybe they just still haven't made it there yet. And it really that was like the first pivot for my relationships, actually reading that book, because I was like, oh, if this is my experience and this is how I showed up and I didn't mean to show up this way because of things that happened to me, then that's probably other people's experiences too. And eventually that led me to I have the saying, observe, but do not absorb, which is one of those things that when you're in relation with someone and you see them behaving a certain way or interacting a certain way, like I watch, I apply grace, but I don't absorb it. Like, it's not personal. This is not about me. They are living their own experience. And that has also given me space to have better, healthier relationships, because I'm not taking every single thing that happens in the interaction as a personal attack on me, because I know where I was when I was in my healing journey. And all you have to do is have a conversation with somebody. You can tell where they are on their healing journey. I can. And I'm like, oh, haven't figured that one out yet, huh?
And, you've had to let go of some relationships too along the way, some long-standing friendships as a result of your journey. What does that look like? Let's dig into that for a minute.
It's painful. Like, one of the things that they don't tell you about healing when you start your journey, they tell you about all the things you're going to gain, but they don't tell you about any of the things that you lose, that you are attached to in your today. And when you are transitioning and growing, only two things happen, people grow with you or you grow apart. That's it. Those are the only options. I don't care what anybody else says. Fight me. Those are the options. And kind of going back to what we talked about earlier is you can't give people what they haven't asked for and they're not ready for. Like, just because you're in one season doesn't mean that they're in that season. And so as I was growing and developing, I have lost some friendships because who I was when I found these people were not who I was as I was growing. And so there was some misalignment, right? And other people, they have other priorities. They were focusing on other things, or we weren't focused on the same thing. And the hardest, I will say, relationship was my 30-year friendship. We had met in high school, and this was my person. Like, still to this day, knows where all the bodies are buried, or at least most of them. All of my secrets, all of my skeletons, was there through all of my, having my son and all of the drama with my early relationship and all of my career highs and pivots and lows. And I remember the last conversation we had, it was very, very short. Apparently I was not showing up for her the way that she expected me to show up, and which I understand because I wasn't the person I was anymore. So I couldn't show up that way anymore because I'm like, that's not who I am. But she said, I never want to speak to you again, and I don't want to have anything else to deal with you. And I said, can I tell my part? And she says, no, I don't want to hear it. That was the last time I spoke with her. That was December 13th, 2022. I remember it to the day because it was like, I remember my wedding day, and I remember when my best friend broke my heart. That was actually what prompted me to go back to therapy, because I could not deal. I just did not know how to process that grief because, especially for women, you're going to circle through men until you find your one, right? It's like, oh, it didn't work. I'm heartbroken. I'm going to find another person. But nobody tells you that your friendships are going to end. Like, I remember I would like go on Google and I'd be like, how do you process the ending of a 30-year friendship? Like, where are these discussions? Again, where is the community for this? Because like, I was just like, is it just me? Like, am I flawed? Am I wrong? Am I broken? I didn't know how to cope. And my therapist was the one that helped me just to process the grief, because that's what it was, and to come to peace with that.
Yeah.
But what happens is you have to honor your journey, and you also have to honor other people's journeys. And I had to accept that we had fallen enough out of alignment that it no longer felt good for the other person. And I had to forgive myself, and I had to forgive that person to move on. And that was really hard, but it was such a powerful lesson for me because it also, in releasing that relationship, gave me permission to rewrite the rules on friendship. Because before, friendships were about longevity, and they were about, how long do you know someone? I've known them since third grade. I've known this person since. And I was just like, I mean, it's a criteria, but it's not the criteria. And so after I, worked on myself, and I really worked to heal that hurt and forgive both of us in that situation, I was like, okay, what does friendship look like to me? It looks like reciprocity. Not in a transactional way. It looks like mutual pouring is what I mean. And let me clarify what I say when I mean mutual pouring, because I'm also of the mind that people can't give you what they can't give themselves. I don't expect for you to pour out of your cup that you need for yourself, and your cup is empty. That's crazy. You need that for yourself. But if I work on myself, and then my cup is full, like my internal cup is full, my joy is full, my self-worth is full, my self-esteem is full, my confidence is full, it's going to pour out of my cup. And everything that pours out, anybody who is close to me will benefit from it. It's like pouring a cup on a counter and filling it up with water, and you don't stop pouring, and everything around it gets wet. Like, those are the type of friendships that I want. I want friendships where you are so full, I don't have to take anything from you, because just being in your presence, my thirst is getting quenched. And same. And even though
You're giving me champagne tower vibes, where like the top cup fills the next cup, fills the cups below it. It cascades.
Girl. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. The champagne vibe. In video editing, I need y'all to add the champagne glass on
Champagne tower.
Champagne tower on the side.
Cheers.
That's exactly what it is, right? And so, like, that relationship ending gave me permission to redefine what actually friendship meant to me, because friendship for so long, even in my 50s, meant the same thing to me it did in my 14 and 15 and 16. And that's crazy. Like, no, I'm not even the same person I was. But because I had had those friendships for so long, I let the same rules exist, because if they changed, the friendships would change or they would end. And,
They
now.
became more of an obligation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember my therapist told me, was that your best friend or was that your oldest friend? And I was like, ouch. And so now I'm still discovering, I'm still learning. I have friends, obviously, that I've had for a very, very long time, for a decade plus. I have my circle of friends who became sisters and sisters who are friends. But I also know that your circle is so important to who you become. And I've not yet become who I'm meant to become. So that means that my circle still needs to have capacity to grow. So I'm still meeting women and people who inspire me and make me curious. And that I'm just like, I wonder if this person will be my new friend.
The people who pour into your cup, too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Because I'm a pourer. I am a pourer. But I've also learned that the minute my cup is at 99% capacity, I stop pouring. I used to be at 10% and still pouring. I do not do that. You have to get the overflow. That's the only way that this works for everybody. For everybody. I think that I show up my best when I feel full. And I've done enough of the work that when I feel is off, I just take a step back. I don't disappear, because I've done that before. I just disappear off the face of this earth because I got to deal with this on my own. I don't do that. I still know how to show up and be present, but I just kind of ease back a little bit. Like, okay, what's happening here? What do you need in this moment? What do you need that you're not getting? Because I also know that I don't need to earn that. I deserve it. And that's important. It's important.
Well, and I've seen you pour into your own cup through building community, lifting up people around you. I see it a lot in, to be cliche, your Facebook posts, right? Getting people engaged, though, getting them talking. You mentioned not gatekeeping, so it could be something as simple as a Facebook post of like, "Hey, what's your favorite spice at the moment?" And all of a sudden, people are talking about what they're doing in their kitchen, or how they're cooking, how they're using it, and it can be such a simple little starting point of a conversation. But then I also look at things like a predecessor to She EmpowHers Her, which was your purposely fearless. A evolution, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As you were starting to really become this, I'm going to be fearless. I'm going to live with purpose. I'm going to set this stuff aside, and I'm going to create this community around embracing this. All of those pieces and that journey and the learning and the growth and kind of creating that community out of something. And I want to bring up one of the fun pieces too that has come along with the journey, and something I know we've talked a little bit about for She EmpowHers is like, show me the money, girl. Right? You went from, we talked about your house were foreclosed on, right? When I met you, you were driving that broke ass starving artist Chevy Malibu. You can edit that if you want.
Yeah, that's staying.
The struggling actress car, right?
Yeah.
But you were fighting for that 45,000, that 50,000, and you've talked about you reached that point in your marketing career of being that 1%.
Listen,
the thing a lot of folks don't talk about, though, is when you come from being broke as hell, eating ramen noodles and mac and cheese, when you start making that money and people start talking things like equity, Ks, high interest savings accounts, CDs, all of these things. Wow. Talk about a resource vacuum, especially for young women in their career who don't grow up with trust fund families and somebody to tell them, here's your 529, here's your 401k already stocked for you, and here's your brand new car when you're 16. Congrats, you started on third base. What do you say to women like that?
So I'm going to speak to two women. First of all, I'm going to talk to the women who have already arrived. It is your responsibility I don't care what anybody says. It is your responsibility to go back and teach the generation behind us what you did not know at that point. Salary transparency. Tell them what you made, where you started. I think my first job, I made $18,000. My last job offer was over $500K. That's a
Get it, girl.
giant jump. And I don't say that to brag. Salary transparency is necessary because how will you even know that that is possible if no one ever says it?
Mhm.
If they don't ever say that you can absolutely double your salary 10 times over and over and over again if you do these things, right?
Yep.
I remember, like I said earlier, when the person told me that I shouldn't even ask for more, I shouldn't ask for 50,000 because I should just take a lateral move, right? And so I think it's our responsibility to share. Like I have sent you job offers and be like, girl, what is this? Tell me what this is.
Yeah.
What stock thing work exactly? Like, tell me,
Yeah.
and you'll tell me like, okay, this is what I got. This is what this means. This is how I'm handling it. This is how I'm managing it. We have to be the ones to tell the other ones, because if we're waiting for the schools to do it, if we're waiting for society to do it, we're going to wait for a really long time. So my first mandate is for all of us who have arrived in our careers, who have gotten to the bag, who have learned how to invest, who have learned how to improve their credit scores, who learned IRAs and 529s, who have learned the art of building and equity. It is our responsibility to teach the generation behind us so that they can teach the generation behind them, and then they can teach the generation behind, because otherwise we just end up in the same perpetual circle where a couple of us make it out and the rest of us we don't, right?
It's easy to forget too that the generations before us couldn't have bank accounts, couldn't have credit cards without their father signing off or their husband
Or their husbands
signing
right
off. So
I had that conversation. They didn't know. A lot of them
They
didn't
didn't
know. A lot of them
Yeah.
didn't know. So yeah, sure, we're learning it for the same time. They're at the same time, and some people know, some people don't. But it always
Yeah.
shocks me when someone says, like on the social medias, it always shocks me when they say, I can't believe you guys didn't know it. How did you
Yeah.
learn? How did you stumble upon this information? So that is that generation. And then the ones, the ones are just still figuring out, there is a level of responsibility on them too when they're, if they don't have resources or a network to tap into, to do research, right? But it's that one's really, really hard because you don't know what you don't know. How do you know what the research if you've never even heard that these things actually exist, right?
Right.
But eventually one term will lead to another term, will lead to another term, will lead to another term, and then you'll eventually grow in your knowledge. So like your due diligence is, if your money isn't right, start with, how do I fix my finances? That's a simple Google search. It will send you down a rabbit hole and you will have years of learning ahead of you. But the other thing is you have to stop being afraid to ask for help. There are, especially as I've been on this journey with She EmpowHers, there are so many women that I have literally just said, hey, I'm doing this thing. And they're like, I will absolutely get on a call with you for 30 minutes. They don't even know me. Like, you connected me to someone. The first thing that she said was, I'm so excited to be on the call with you. I don't know what we're talking about, but Brooke said another woman needed help. And here I am to help. And I was like, yes, girl. Thank you. And so like, put that ego to the side. Ask someone who looks like they may know, and maybe they don't have the resources you need, or maybe they don't have all the wisdom, but maybe they point you in the right direction. And so I say, reach back, help someone, and also be proactive and put your ego to the side and ask for help. Because that's the only way that you're going to grow. That's really it.
Build the staircase behind you.
Build the staircase. Build the staircase, damn it. Build the staircase. So important.
Build the staircase.
And fulfilling.
For She EmpowHers, I think this is why it resonated so much with me, though, is like the you don't know what you don't know, and bringing together those resources and those experts and making it easier to find the information, the community, the support that you need in the career, the financial, the family, the
Yeah.
parenting, the relationships. Because I think of how many hours I've wasted searching, trying to find the right thing, where we're thinking of all of that in a library or one place and having somebody say, I can help, and what
Oh,
that means. So I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited for this journey. I appreciate you asking me to be a part of this and to help you share your story
thank
today.
you.
Because I think it's so powerful for women to hear from someone who has been through the ugly, the dirty, the hard, and made it out the other side. Not
Mhm.
just somebody who landed there by accident, but who did it purposefully. And so I'm so excited for not only for you and where this journey takes you, but for all of the women who are willing to take this step and who are looking for the resources and wanting to invest in themselves. Because yes, like that champagne tower, by pouring into themselves, they'll pour into their families, their communities, the others
Mm.
around them, and really have the opportunity to just lift up others in their lives. So thank you for taking us all on this journey.
Yay! I'm so excited. And thank you for giving me an opportunity to tell my story, to tell my truth, to lay it all out. I hope that it is helpful and beneficial. I hope that someone sees themselves in this story, in this conversation, and that they realize that they are exactly where they need to be, even if they're not where they want to be. And as long as they are taking it one step at a time, they will get there. They will be empowered and they will be able to empower others. So, with that, I am wrapping up our very first episode. So proud of us. Thank you so much, Brooke, for the interview. It was amazing to just have this chat with you and to be able to just talk honestly about the real raw and what it took for me to rise. And I'm just so excited about, as you said, like building something amazing for women that I truly believe, like in my heart of hearts, I've never believed in anything more in my life. And I'm excited about the women that will transform through this experience, and how it grows over the next couple of years and decades. And so if anybody is curious as to what we are even talking about, please visit us at www.sheempowhers.com. EmpowHers is EmpowHers, sheempowhers.com. Or you can check us out on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, Threads. We're everywhere. Just type in She EmpowHers and I promise you will find us. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in to this first episode and we'll see you at the next one. Bye.